and welcome to Dungeons and Wellness. My name is Michelle, and I will be your DM today and throughout the rest of Dungeons and Wellness. So, we are here to welcome you to our show and to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here. Why? Why did we make Dungeons and Wellness, and what even is the purpose? So, Dungeons and Wellness is basically our little experiment in wellness, where we are working as a team in order to explore mental health and the concept of holistic wellness, specifically through the lens of Dungeons and Dragons. For you D&D aficionados out there, we will specifically be using the gameplay mechanics of 5th edition, or D&D 5e. So, as you may see in our description, we have 3 primary focuses for this channel. Essentially, first of all, I think it's super important to fight societal stigma around mental health by raising awareness and showing people that it's okay to have conversations. It's okay to be vulnerable and have conversations about these things that impact all of us. Not only that, but another primary objective for us is to learn how to identify the signs of mental health concerns, mental wellness struggles in both ourselves and others. We live in a community, and the world is a better place when everybody helps each other out. Thirdly, we want to explore and understand more about how healing and growth can become integral aspects of every single person's mental wellness journey. We all come from a different place. We all have different paths through life. However, one thing that we have in common is that we can still pursue that which is wellness for ourselves. It may mean something different for everyone, but we can still find our way. The journey is the destination. So, the question here, or now a question is, why D&D, right? Like, there are so many different ways people choose to talk about wellness. So why did we choose Dungeons and Dragons in particular? Well, this wonderful team that we have here at Dungeons and Wellness, we realized, first of all, we are all D&D fans. And we realized that there are so many different aspects of the tabletop role-playing game experience that can really, really help us to have open, honest, and deep conversations about things that are important to us, like mental health. In D&D, you have facilitated conversations with a DM as a mediator. There is structure to the conversation, and everyone works towards a common goal. Not only that, but when you play D&D, there's a certain distance between the player and the character that sometimes allows us to talk about things that we may feel less comfortable about when we're talking about ourselves. So, because of this and a plethora of other reasons, we realized D&D has phenomenal untapped potential for opening the avenue to having these kinds of conversations. So, D&D, this game that we love, this game that is a phenomenon right now. It's been amazing to see how D&D has grown in popularity so much, especially over the last couple of years. We found that tabletop role-playing games are really more popular than ever, considering everyone's staying home and everyone is looking to make those meaningful connections. We heal in community. However, D&D wasn't always quite as warmly embraced by mainstream society as it is today. Today, we see the amazing potential that D&D has to offer for communication, building relationships, exploring questions of the soul. But once upon a time, that is not how mainstream society saw D&D. So to tell us a little more about that, today we have one of our amazing players joining us, the one and only Steve.
Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Steve.
How you doing?
You know, doing all right. It's our intro to the channel, so I'm pretty
Nice.
excited. How are you?
I'm okay. So, yeah, back in the 80s when I first started playing, about 83, 84, at the time, the cultural landscape, there was, in terms of that, there was this brief and bizarre aspect to it called the Satanic Panic. According to the experts like Geraldo Rivera, who did a special on this, there were satanic cults all across the country ready to whisk people away to the realms of darkness and depravity, and it was all a bunch of nonsense. But I mean, certain things in entertainment were being like blamed, and being like thrown in as part of that, like music, heavy metal music, certain types of art, imagery, books, and games like Dungeons and Dragons. That really started. Some college kid disappeared. I forgot his name. And the police came and searched his bedroom, and he was a D&D player. Mm-hmm. And they found all the books. And back then the books had like, what they deemed demonic imagery on the covers. And what they turned out to be like, the Dungeon Master's Guide had an Afridi demon. And if you turned the back cover over, you saw it was part of the elemental plane. So it made sense to put that on there. The old player's handbook had the statue of a demon. I don't remember what type it was. And there were two thieves climbing up there, and they had diamonds in its eyes or jewels. And the two thieves climbing up there to pry the jewels away. And there was, there were some dead monsters on the floor around it that the party had just killed. I mean, well, people back then thought that it was some type of ritualistic killing, that, they were all worshiping at the altar this, fantasy demon, and they killed these poor beings to sacrifice to it. And meanwhile, these beings were like, I think they were lizard men. But yeah, so that added to it. Anyway, so, they determined that, this kid was into Satanism and other aspects, that he ran down into like, the boiler, the basement boiler room of his college, and he disappeared down there, and God knows what he was doing there with all the satanic nonsense going on. And as it turns out, they found him months later at a friend's house doing drugs. And like, totally spaced out, didn't remember, he was still a member of the college, but
right.
Satan had nothing to do with it. We'll put it that way. The devil had nothing to do with it.
Sure. Maybe D&D didn't have as much to do with it.
He had nothing to do with it. He went to a friend's house and they started partying. The game had nothing to do with it. And months later, they were still partying when they found him.
Sounds like maybe there was something else going on.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
For me personally, I had to talk to the school psychologist in 9th grade. I was getting picked on, and I was getting a little anxious, depressed. That's a whole other story. But so I went to see him, and he asked me at one point, "What do you do with your friends?" And I told him, "Oh, we play this game called Dungeons and Dragons." And up until that point, he was very laid back and sitting in his chair like this, listening to me. I was telling him about the music I liked at the time, like Zeppelin and all that, Black Sabbath, all that stuff. But the minute I said D&D, he leans forward and like he stared at me, kind of like a beholder. Ooh. And he's like, "You play Dungeons and Dragons?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was 14, so he's kind of freaking me out. And he called my parents, and he proceeded to tell them what a dangerous game it was, and that D&D is known to cause suicide, other mental health issues, but suicide is the big one. And so I had to have a conversation with my parents. So little did I know that an old friend of mine, he was having the same conversation with his parents across town. about like, why should we be allowed to play this game? And we were both telling our parents, like, number one, it's got nothing to do with suicide. And if it does, we didn't use the word trigger, but we said if it does cause somebody to hurt themselves, they had problems to begin with. I mean, we're 14. We didn't really know how to phrase that.
Right.
And that
Okay.
it makes us happy. It
Right.
promotes friendship. A whole group of us would gather around the table with or books, and we didn't use minis at the time, but it promoted imagination, and plus was an excuse to eat Doritos and drink Pepsi, order Pizza Hut. Anything you see from an '80s movie, it's like that's
Sure.
and
Yeah.
without ET, of course. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. And him and I
Wow.
still play to this day. And our parents, my parents, like, okay, like they thought I stated it as eloquently as I could. And they realized they saw us play every Friday, Saturday, whatever. Nothing bad was going on.
Hmm.
They promote teamwork. We're having fun. A bunch of kids laughing in the kitchen for 3 to 4 hours.
Sure. It's interesting to see, I guess, the level of critical thinking that went into being able to understand that D&D at its core is essentially just playing make believe
That's all it is.
with some
It's a
dice.
communal game. It promotes imagination, teamwork, and
Right.
as we'll see in what we do, it promotes a lot of other cool things and decision making, confidence. Now it's come around full circle because now mental health professionals are using Dungeons and Dragons and other role playing games to help kids with autism to learn how to communicate and and learn how to deal with other aspects of their life. And say like a kid with communicative autism, like, but they're they can't relate to discussing like what's going on with them. The therapist will say, well, what would your character say? You'll make up a character. Let's try some role playing, some cool thing, D&D or Star Wars, whatever. What would your character say to this situation? And they're finding that a lot of the times kids are like, oh, my character would say this. And it's usually tied into their therapy plan.
And so who's speaking? Is it the character?
It's the character is an extension of you, so the kid is speaking.
Wow. So powerful.
So yeah, very powerful. So that's how it's the cultural landscape as far as that's concerned is definitely changed for the better for this game and other role playing games. They're no longer demonized. They still have like some sinister artwork, but it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's all tied into the game. It's all in good fun. That's what it always was. It's what it always will be.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes,
And the game
absolutely.
change has become more and more inclusive for other cultures. So yeah, I think it's a great. I think it's like a great tool, great to use for mental health. I think it's fun.
Yeah,
The game that grows with you. It doesn't. I'm 51 now. I've been playing since I was 14. You change the way you play and DM as you grow older, but the core, as long as you maintain this love of fantasy, it's always going to be there. Might change the way you play it. Noticing that when I was like 17, 18, my characters would rush in where angels fear to tread. Once I got into like late 30s, 40s, and especially now, I notice my characters are like being a little bit more cautious. It's like in real life, they're a little more cautious. That could also be, experience that, I'm not going to run into that cave because there's a dragon waiting there to you kill me. But it's also, but that also rings true with real life. You're not going to, somebody gets older, you're not going to rush into something to think about before you do it.
Absolutely.
So it's a game that definitely grows with you. And yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm glad I'm still playing. I'm glad they still make it. And it's growing.
Yes.
And I'm happy to grow with it. I've made some cool friends since I started playing it again. Like you and over the last 6-7 years. And there was a time I didn't play it. because life got in the way, but I always missed it. So after I started playing it, 6, 7 years ago, I said, that's it. I'm never going to stop again.
Amazing.
Why did I ever stop? No.
Oh, relatable. But I love how you said D&D is really, it's like a tool. And the way you described it there, it feels like it's a tool that people use in order to engage with life and to inform, like you were saying, the way you play your character or the way you play your characters has changed over the course of your life, and that teaches you about yourself. It gives you further insight into how you've developed as a person, and the way that you play D&D has changed, just like the way you approach life has changed. And I love that you drew that connection between our experience within Dungeons and Wellness and our experience just moving through the real world as people, as humans.
And I'm totally open to use it, changing careers, going into mental health when I'm done with grad school. I'm totally open to use it in therapy. If I get a chance, if there's a chance to use it, I will definitely keep that, on the back burner, and I will try to use that if I can.
Absolutely.
I'm glad the option's there, and I'm glad that, other people are doing it. And I also read that prison psychiatrists are using it as well to get through prisoners, help them with their anger issues or their guilt or whatever they're feeling.
Wow.
Before they come back into like society and try to make it out here again. They're using that as a tool to help strengthen them. And it's, I don't know if Gary Gygax had this in mind when he designed the game, and Dave Arneson designed the game back in the 70s, but it's definitely grown. So.
Oh yeah.
Even at other role-playing games, they can do the same thing, but since we're D&D fans, that's what we're concentrating on.
Right, absolutely.
Role-playing games to do this: Star Wars, Doctor Who, Gamma World. But yeah, so D&D is the granddaddy of them all, so we'll start with that.
Right. I think that role-playing in general is a fantastic tool.
Well, people are using role-playing in group therapy for years. Just traditional role playing, but now it's turned, people. I'm sure some of those people who led those groups were aware of fantasy role playing or sci-fi role playing. Maybe that's happening. Maybe that was helping them to get their ideas together.
Oh, for sure.
Now it's acceptable to actually use fantasy role playing in terms of a therapy plan. So role playing has been part of psychology for quite some time. It's not a new concept.
Absolutely, I agree. And I think that I should say I am very glad that role playing has been able to become popularized within the context of a game. And that makes it more accessible to people. Maybe, people who say, oh, but playing make-believe is for kids. Well, now they have a structured game that allows them to tap into that side of that creative, imaginative side of themselves, that allows them to access really perhaps some emotions, memories, and things that they otherwise would feel resistance when they're trying to get to.
Well, it's interesting because one of the forwards of my old versions of the Lord of the Rings, it says the adult mind, if the adult mind needs more of an outlet for fantasy than the child mind does. And and yeah, there's went on to explain how these series of books serve as that. So yeah, I totally agree with that adults have more of a need for that these days, or maybe they always did, than kids do.
Yeah. Maybe all humans need to have some sort of creative release, but some humans just hold themselves back a little bit more.
So just finishing this up, back in the 80s, my favorite drink of choice during the games was Orange Crush. So this Orange Crush is for D&D past and present, and all my old and current D&D buddies.
Well, cheers to that, sir.
We are.
And here we are, friends old and new. Everything comes full circle. So, wow, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Steve.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I come to D&D as a relatively new player and DM. I've been involved in D&D like for the last couple of years, but it really is so amazing to hear about kind of your wealth of experience having played D&D, you know, back in the day, like in the days of the satanic panic, you stuck it out and you said, no, this is what I want to do. I'm living my best life.
That's right. Rolling my dice.
Amazing.
Listening to my Ozzy.
And your Black Sabbath, don't forget.
Yes. Well,
so, yes.
okay.
So, to tie all of that back into Dungeons and Wellness, as we see, D&D is an amazing platform, an amazing avenue to teach us about our everyday lives. Like Steve and I, we just had a conversation about how much your experience with D&D has informed your life, your sense of, you know, your awareness of yourself, how your approach to life has changed over the years. And this is through thinking about your relationship to this tabletop game.
Mm-hmm.
And so at Dungeons and Wellness, we are trying to tap into that potential, that amazing, creative, imaginative potential of Dungeons and Wellness, where we unlock all of the inspiration that the human soul has to offer. And we're trying to see, what can we learn? What can we learn about ourselves, about the world, and ultimately about our wellness through the lens of D&D 5e? This is the purpose of Dungeons and Wellness. And Steve, thank you so much for sharing that story that encapsulates that. So now our viewers are probably wondering, what is this whole show going to look like anyway? So we are going to be splitting our episodes between what we call play episodes and clarity episodes. Essentially, we're going to start off with a play session where we play for 45 minutes to an hour. People who are familiar with D&D may recognize that's shorter than your usual D&D session. However, we wanted to keep it to a length that would be manageable for most people to watch without getting overwhelmed. And we figured a 3 to 4 hour video, maybe not everybody's cup of tea. Maybe not everyone has the time. So 45 minutes to an hour of play. And then every other episode following that is what we call a clarity session, where we will talk about what happened during the previous play episode, what character interactions occurred, and ultimately, what lessons can we draw from that play episode that can inform ourselves, our characters, and the way we move through the world. So, play episodes and clarity episodes. They will go hand in hand, and we will alternate. Now, the very last thing that I wanted to say in this introduction to the channel is to introduce the man behind the curtain, the amazing producer who is making all of this possible, because I certainly do not have the tech skills to stream and manage all of these amazing windows coming in and out. So
neither do I.
Yes. So without further ado, please come onto the stage, Dru.
Hi, gang. I'm Dru. I'm going to be one of the regular players, but backstage, I'm kind of running the production on the show, so you know I can do things like this and random shit.
Nice.
So yeah, don't mind me. I'm newer to the wellness world and the Dungeons and Dragons world than these guys. I'm mostly here for tech stuff and to try to bring some silliness to the affair whenever possible. But it's going to be great. We're going to have some good guests, and yeah, I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Totally. Yay.
Dru and Steve, thank you so much to both of you for being part of this project.
Thank you.
Yes, I created this with a dream in my heart, hoping to bring more wellness and light to the world. So thank you for being part of this. And of course, thank you to our amazing audience for being here, for sharing your time with us, and for being open to our very own experiment in wellness. Goodbye. See you soon.
Yeah.